Hi everyone, and welcome to Geotab Online Training. This is Carrie Carter, and today's session is on MyGeotab tips and tricks. As we enter into the session, Jordan Guter is just starting off with the introduction.
As a simple introduction, we're trying to teach you how to get the most out of MyGeotab, just ways to make it easier and simpler for yourself. We're going to try and show you some things that are a little bit less known and not so common knowledge, and hopefully you'll learn something new throughout this. All right, so the first one, this is something I have brought up, but I want to mention it time and time again, is how to connect to a database properly. So for end users who are possibly on this line as opposed to resellers, you don't need to worry about this option. It's set up properly for you to be able to log in directly into your database. But for any resellers, as you know, it could be a little troublesome figuring out all the databases and how to connect to them. So since we have gone to 5.7, and I did point this out in the changes from 5.6 to 5.7, you do have to go to the URL to add the database name to the end of .com/. It's the reason why we did this, I just want to point out, is that it's much simpler for the end user to not get confused by various database names, as they only have access to the one. So it makes things a little bit easier for them, and it's one less thing to worry about. We hope that this streamlines things for the end users, but it will make things a little bit, one extra step for resellers and Geotab employees alike. So as pointed out here, resellers are advanced users, being Geotab users that have multiple accounts, can access other databases via the URL. So as you can see, here is an example of my.geotab.com/G560, which is the database name. And I'll just show a really quick example of that. As you can see, I start typing in G560 after the /, click enter, and once the system goes through and connects to that server, it'll ask me to log in. Oh, right, and if you're already logged in, it'll log you directly in. Otherwise, it'll bring you to a screen with all the databases you can see and that you've been in before. So just really quick, one more small example of this. All right. And as you can see, in this particular case, it already redirected to my tree for me, and it brings me to the login screen, which I can use to log in. And I'm in. Pretty straightforward and easy. A lot of you already know how to do this, but it's just important to go through it so you don't have any confusion moving forward. The next thing is basically to know your browser, know how it works, and know the tips and tricks it provides. It's not just about what MyGeotab uses, but if you can learn how the browser works, you can learn some things that make things a little bit easier. If you're not a fan of always reaching over your mouse when you already have your hands on your keyboard, you can use some tricks to scroll up and down when looking at a list of vehicles, for example. So if I click spacebar, you can see it moves, and if I click shift space, it moves. So spacebar goes down, shift space goes up. And it's just a small little trick. I can also use the arrow keys to do it, or the page up and page down, but just small things to help you on your keyboard to get through things a little bit quicker. And other tips, how to open up tabs, because MyGeotab can actually be opened in multiple tabs, I believe up to 6, and still provide you the information within the same browser. And it might just be easier to open up a new tab instead of not leaving where you are at the time. So if I'm still looking at vehicles, for example, and I don't want to leave the vehicle page, but I want to open up seeing a new vehicle, I can either right-click and open up a new tab, or using the tricks that I just showed, using Shift and then click, or sorry, Control and click, it will open up the new tab here. If I use Shift and click, it'll just open up a brand new menu, or a brand new window browser. So just another small thing. It just saves you some time. I just want to see this vehicle really quick. Control click, and it opens up the new tab.
So Control click opens up the new tab within that window, and Shift click opens it up in a separate window, right?
Yes, thank you, Angie. Sorry, I got mixed up between Shift and Control myself there. Zooming in and out, these are things that I'm pretty sure a lot of you already know how to do. But just to help out, this could be useful when the font might be too small for you to see. And also just a quick point is that our font and everything is already made to cater to HD displays and for your retina. So it's, you shouldn't have to worry about damaging your eyes looking at our software if that was a concern for anybody. For a quick example, if I do click Control and click up on my wheel, it'll actually zoom me in. If I go down, it zooms out. And you can see at the top right of the screen, it actually tells me what my zoom level is. So for those of you who think that the font's a little bit too small in the browser by default, you can go ahead and make it more convenient for you to look at. This should not be mistaken with zooming in on a map, though, because this is zooming in everything on the browser itself. So if I zoom in using this, you can see that everything on the side is becoming bigger and closer too. Whereas if I just use the scroll wheel, it zooms in and out of the map itself. That's the difference between using Control and not using Control. So the next thing that could be very useful if utilizing a browser is actually using bookmarks. You can have various bookmarks to actually save various pages or information that you might want. For example, you might want to bookmark your map, so all you have to do is click on that bookmark and it brings you right there. I'll just bring this to the next mark first, though, is that in line with this bookmarking is that URLs in 5.7 are very powerful. Everything you do in there can actually be saved through the URL. If you want to go straight to devices, you could put in your extensions, your database name, and then the / number devices or number map, and it'll go straight to that page already. To just sort of show an example of this, I will go back to the browser and just go to a brand new page here. You can see I'm already in a vehicle. I can paste it, click enter, because you can see I have my number sign map, and it takes me right there. I can bookmark this page, as showed before. I can go devices, and I'll take it to the device page. You can bookmark these various areas and save it. I could even save a map page with certain vehicles selected, because maybe those are the ones I always want to see. Maybe I always want to see what Alex is up to. And I can just paste that in. So if I get rid of this, paste in that URL with that person selected, I can press enter. And once I do so, it'll take me to that maps page, and it's slowly going to load in Alex's location on that map. And there you go. With this URL there, I can see that Alex is already selected and where he is in this location. All right. So another point that we want to make out that's kind of important for everything in our company is that when we build this website, mobile is considered to be the first and foremost priority for when we build it. That means we actually build it for the mobile platform. It should work there. So what that means for you is that we don't actually have two versions of our software, one for mobile and one for the computer. It's all the same. If you log into the software on your computer or on your phone, you'll be able to get the same page, but it will compress itself and fit itself to fit on your phone properly. Like I mentioned, this is made to give you the full power on your mobile devices. It's built so that it would fit on the phone nicely, and you can use it there. I can actually show a quick example of sort of how this would look for you. And really quickly, as you can see, I'm going to shape this page almost to look like it's made for a phone. And as you can see, we have a little bar here that brought in some of these menu options. Let's say I was on a smaller phone without as good resolution. Everything is squished in, made to fit, but still with all the options available. Just in the case of the menu options at the top, we actually had to put into this screw-like object and put into there under a drop-down menu. And still all these options and selections are here, and you can still do everything you otherwise would need to do in the software. If you need to bring that main menu back to the top left, where you can click that arrow, and as you can see, it actually overloads on the map, on the vehicle selected for this map, because it's set up for a smaller view. If I were to maximize this, you see this gets brought back out. But in a smaller form, it actually overlaps when I bring up this menu. It's just to show that it is made for the mobile platform. We have still had some questions about people requesting a mobile version, but we're stressing that because we're utilizing the HTML5 format, we are able to make this for the phone and also for the PC at the same time. All right, so I did show this a while before, but it's good to point out again. This is one thing that was hugely requested by a lot of people, is the fact that you could remove and add dashboards as you see fit, and also move the order, move things around, etc. So as you know, administrators can publish the dashboards to show what you might want to see, be it various different graphs, pie charts, etc. But the individuals themselves are able to move these around as they see fit. They are able to change the order, not see them, etc. So for a quick example, you see we have some reports here. And this was a report here, this management report test was not made that well. Seeing this page doesn't do much for me, so I'm just going to get rid of it. If you want to bring it back, everything is hidden in this option up here with the add report. And if I wanted to bring it back, I can just click, and it will do so. And furthermore, I can move the order as necessary by clicking at the top of it, not the middle, because that's actually trying to open the file. But by clicking and dragging the top of it, I can move its order around. Get rid of it, bring it back, etc.
Now keep in mind this is on an individual basis, so you're not changing this view for everybody else. This is just for your own view. So maybe there's dashboards that the administrator created for everybody, but to you maybe it's not something that's important, so you can just hide it from your own view.
Okay, I have a question for you. Something that's come up with before is if you have removed a report and then someone says, okay, I need to bring it back again, and they can't see it, what are they missing?
Okay, so there could be a couple of things that would stop them from being able to see that. The first thing to check, as I pointed out before, is the add report. This is where they would be hidden if you hid it yourself.
And sometimes it gets set by you for someone else on that default, and that's where you have to go set it back to. That was the issue, so I just wanted to bring it up because I've seen it happen a few times that It's been set as a default dashboard, it's been turned off by somebody else so they don't realize they're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Good,
so,
thanks.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because what Carrie's saying is if you were to change the custom report, if you set up a report here for a dashboard and enable the dashboard, you might not set the viewer to be a group that you can see. You might actually set it to be a group that's below you or to the side of you that isn't within your scope, and because of that, you won't see the dashboard. Now, normally that doesn't mean you can make it that way to begin with. If you're a part of the entire organization, you can set it for the other groups, you should be able to see it, but maybe your scope has changed after the fact, and you can't see it anymore. So what Carrie's trying to say is maybe that was the situation. I was in group 1, I made it viewable by everybody under group 1, being group A and B, and then I was moved to group 2. And now I no longer can see group A and B anymore, and now I can't see that report.
Thanks, George. I think it just clears it up to say keep looking. If you can't find it, it's there. You just need to figure out where it is that you're missing the link.
So recently we've done some, Angie has done some presentations about doing reporting and how to use Excel and how to show things. This goes in line with this, showing custom views. Knowing what you might want to show or what information you might want to display, you can actually create your own custom views to help this. They can be created to show very specific scenarios or very unique situations that might be more in line with what your company needs or what most of your customers need. As a small example here is you might actually want to see an example of firmware being released. You might want to keep track of what firmware is on your devices. So what we've done is actually made a report that's just the graph that when you click on it in the view option, and I'll show you very soon live, is you can bring up this graph showing you what all the device firmware versions are within that database. And this is just making it in Excel.
Yeah, so it's just a simple Excel snapshot, and it shows you basically what tabs are not hidden in that report. So for that particular one, they probably created the chart on a separate tab and hid all of the other ones, so that was the only one that's viewable. So when they open up that report, that's all you see is the chart instead of all of the detailed stuff, which is not very easily viewable in the system.
Now, this obviously has to be changed a little bit because it's a little bit too compressed to see the numbers underneath, but that's easily fixable within Excel. But here's just an example of what it looks like. How many vehicles are on this firmware, etc. Oh, actually, this is made to show just what's on 101.anything, 105.anything. So you know what versions of devices these are. So, you know, you can obviously make more fun, crazy, interesting things. Our reports are macro enabled, so if you need to make anything, you can enable those macros and make things look more interesting. This is just a very simple example of what you can do.
And the great thing is that you don't have to open it in Excel to see it.
Yeah.
That's why we did it.
That's a perfect point that Angie brought up. Because if you hide the other tabs and they won't show it, this is almost a whole new view within the software that you otherwise wouldn't have seen. And to be honest, the first time I saw it, I'm like, how did they get this to show here like this? And it's just because they made a specific report that did that. So that's another advantage to this view option and reporting that you make, as opposed to just on the summary page. You can actually make it within the system itself. Not all these reports have to be Excel format information. You can make it, you know, nice graphs or pie charts, et cetera, that you might want to see. All right, so just moving on from this is you can actually change your default map view. So what this means is when you first log into the map, this is especially used for dispatch or people who are only interested in seeing one city. Instead of having to zoom in on your city to see everything that's going on, you can actually create a default maps view. So I'll just show you a quick example within here and then show you one myself. So if you'd like, you can create a map view, which is you go over a certain spot on the map, you click on the map view, you scroll down, you go to views, and you can save a new view. You can give it a name, and once you give it a name, say it's Oakville, you can actually move this on top. So just to show you a more live example of this, I'll go to the live map, and I've already done one here, but let me just change it over. So I grew up in the city of Mississauga. I'll use this as an example. I just want to make a view of Mississauga because that's where my lawn care company is, and I want to see where all the vehicles are there, and I just want to show up here every time. So I just go to my views. I can save a new view, Mississauga, save that. Then, great, it's now saved in here. When I go to the map and I look at my views, I can always click on it. But maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to specifically have it set to my default. So if I go to my own options, scroll down, I can move that Mississauga up to the top. And now when that's on the top, whenever I log in for the first time and I go to the map, it'll go to that view that I showed you when I clicked Mississauga. And you can make it any of those views. And this is mostly useful for an end user who might want to see specific areas.
It's really good for dispatching. You may have a dispatcher that's part of a certain region. You don't want them to have to look at the entire map of North America when they go in. They're only part of a certain region, so that would be the best use for that.
And to further that is really quick, the UI settings. The default page at startup is when you first log in, that's where it goes. So if I set it up to be live maps and I set, say, Oakville to be at the top of this list, it will show it right when I log in. It will go straight to the map and that location. It only saves a couple of clicks, but maybe you're on your phone, maybe you have slower internet. It might just save you some time, and it could be useful.
Very useful, actually, for any of those small fleets that are just in one city. If that's the map that you want, that's all you need to see. You don't need to see all of the U.S. or even all of the states that you're in. You can really customize it to exactly what you want.
We just have a question about asking, can we do this when setting up a new client?
If you mean, can you do it from the start, from the get-go, you absolutely can. You can set it up, but one point I didn't mention, and I should probably say it now, is the views are individually made. So you cannot make a view for another user. They have to make it for themselves. So when you're setting up the database, yeah, you can set up those views, but the users themselves have to make their own.
Make their own or set their own?
They have to set their own, sorry. Because they have to go to their options. You can go to their options and change it yourself. I highly recommend, though, just leaving it up to them to make it the view that they'd like to see.
Unless they request that you do it, then yeah, absolutely. There's someone mentioning that it currently defaults to the U.S., whereas they need it to be something else.
So the default will be the U.S., so you'll have to change it yourself when you first log into the database. I know that's a problem, but that's actually a really good point. And one of the takeaways from this thing is maybe I'll talk to them about possibly changing that default. All right, so continuing on, we do have some points to make about the posted road speeds. As a lot of you know, we do offer posted road speed support now, but it is very important to point out that nobody out there right now has perfect data. No company out there has the exact information for every road in the world to be perfect. There are some better than others, and we do believe we are with one of the better companies, being OpenStreetMaps, and our fallback layer is one of them being MapTech. Between the two of them, we have very, very accurate data, but it is important to point out that in a lot more rural areas or areas that aren't queried as often for their information, it might not be as up to date as could possibly, would be if they were in big cities. But we're working hard with them to get that all that information up to date, and in the future we'll be within a 95, 98% accuracy, and we're hoping to get there soon. But what we provide you right now is that you can actually update the speeds yourself if you need. If you don't have access to if you have access to OpenStreetMaps, already you can go in there and update. But as you know, it could take a little time for OpenStreetMap updates to actually be viewable within MyGeotab. So what I mean is if you go into OpenStreetMaps, make an account, and then update a road speed, it might take 2 to 3 months before you can see it within MyGeotab. But we actually have a partnership with them where we can actually update that road speed on our end, and it'll be done immediately for you. It might take a day or two for you to see it, but the second you type it in, it's actually done. And the only reason why it takes that day or two is specifically because all the edits are audited. We don't want people to make edits that are wrong or false. So because they're audited, it does take that 1-2 days maybe for you to see it, because we can revert them or even block users from updating it at all. So what that means for you is, yes, anybody can change the same street you're looking at, but if we notice that somebody's being malicious with their change streets or they're being incorrect, we can actually revert that change and block them from making further changes. So your data should be safe. And just as a small example within this window is when you click on a spot, you can update the speed. And I'll just show you a live example on a live map right now. Again, using Mississauga as an example. So it's possible I was driving in Mississauga and I was seeing for speeding in a certain road that I know isn't at the correct road speed. I can just click that road, click update road speed, and as you can see, it shows the location that's affected by this road speed update, and I can go ahead and change it as I see fit, and then apply changes. I'm not actually going to do it this location because this location is actually proper, but it's just an example to show. And if I were to click this and it was recently changed and I click it, a little line up here saying this street has been recently changed will show. And it's as simple as that. Now, one drawback to this, and I'll use this bigger road as an example, is unfortunately we can't change the segments of the road as of now. So as you can see, I selected Burnhamthorpe Road, but it only selected the small segment of the road to change. And if I need to change the entirety of the road to a higher speed, a higher road speed, it could take some time to do that. So there's two things I recommend here. One is, get through it and do the whole road in small segments, or utilize OpenStreetMaps itself and just wait for the longer update time on our end, because their system's a little bit better when it comes to that. I do know, though, that we do have plans to try and accommodate for this a little bit better. So it's not coming out anytime soon, but our long-term roadmap plan is to have it optional to change the segment size. All right. Again, if there's any questions, please let me know. It seems like we're going well right now.
Someone's asking if we can do smaller sections.
Again, that falls through with the exact comment I made. Right now, we cannot. But again, if you go to OpenStreetMaps, you could probably do it within there. Just you will have to live with that 1, 2, 3 month update to our system timeline. The reason why is because OpenStreetMaps only updates their maps every month, and we only sync with them every month, and they don't land on the same day. So it's possible you could land right after the day OpenStreetMaps does it, a whole month later they update it, and then a whole month later after that maybe is when we update it. All right, now one other thing that might be a problem for a lot of users is the fact that when you have a lot of rules in the database, that map gets cluttered by rules. And I'll show you a really good example soon of what that could look like. Because maybe you create these rules just for reporting purposes. You actually don't care where they happen on the map. You don't want to see them on the map. You don't want to see the colors change for the routes. And it just clutters things up. So you can actually make them invisible. As you can see, it's just about selecting not visible on the map. When you create the rule. And as you can see, we have a lot of clutter here. This is not easy to see. Not only do we have a lot of zones, but we have a lot of other things going on. One thing I will point out, though, is you can hide those zones from view. And a lot of people don't realize that just because you don't look at these options. But those zones might get irritating to look at, and you can just change that button there. Toggle it, and you don't see the zones anymore. Already, it's much cleaner. But now we have these rules. So there's two ways we can make these rules invisible. Is one right now, I could click through all the rules that were broken and clear it up. And one thing I'll show you is even when I move, you might see some pop up. It only shows me the rules that were broken in the view I have. All right, so in this view, I have a lot of rules. But when I zoom into this small little spot here, it's only these rules that were broken. But these clutter things up really, really fast if you have a lot of rules. So one thing is, if we do select that option to hide it from the rule section, and remember my control click, I'm just going to open up a whole new tab and go into here. I go to one of these rules. You can see I can make it not visible if I'd like. And it won't even show up on the map. But it will still show up in this triangle option if you highlight it. It will not remove itself from here. So even if it's only one rule that broke, it doesn't show on the map, it will still show a caution sign here saying it did break a rule. And that's just because it's there for reporting purposes. It doesn't clutter your map. It doesn't get in the way. But it's just there in case you want to know if somebody broke a specific rule without actually seeing where it happened. And now this is something that I believe Angie touched on, or even went through in detail, is you can actually block your report from being sent. As a lot of you know, in your reports you have a data tab. And within this data tab there is an option for sending report. This report will only send an email if it's true. Normally we default it to true just so it always sends. But if you'd like to make a formula that changes it between true or false, you can actually have it not send data at a given time. What this is most useful for, and it's pointed out here as an example, is for a due reminder. For example, if you have maintenance reminders, and as you know, there's no way for the maintenance reminder to just email you right now for telling you when something's due, is you can have a weekly report set up to only email if a maintenance reminder is due within a certain amount of days or a certain amount of kilometers or miles driven. So you can choose between them, and you can have it send or not send if it hasn't happened.
Another good example, which I've done before, is with the watchdog report. So only send if there are offline units, because a lot of people will have the watchdog report sent to them daily because they want to know what's going on. But after a week or so of that, if there's no issues, it just becomes junk to them, and you just create a filter and toss it to the side and not even worry about it. But if you only get it when there's an issue, then you're always going to look at it because you know that there's something that you need to take action on.
All right. Sorry, just on that point that Angie's bringing up, is I'm kind of glad she did, because just yesterday I had a question from somebody asking if they could filter out watchdog report unless it had something wrong with it. And it is a serious case that people come up with. They don't want to see this clutter, and they don't want to see things. So as you can see here, I have a normal report. It has a chart summary. Just remember, you have to unhide that data tab. And when you unhide that, you have the report here. And what you could do is create a simple formula to say that if there's anything in this device report that I don't like, I could change that. So if you scroll to the side, you have other information, device data, last time it was active. So what you could do is maybe even write a report that if it's active within 7 days of today, it's false. But if it's active over 10 days today, then make it true. Right? You can change this formula to whatever you want. I won't actually show you what I recommend, because this is completely up to you how you would like to run your watchdog reports. Every company is different. Everybody else wants it different. And you don't just have to limit it to watchdog reports. It's up to you to make it to anything you want. Maintenance reminders, though, is the general example given, because there is no in-house way for the maintenance report to send you automatically. But with this, it basically is automatic for when there's a maintenance that's due.
Just to know that that tool is there for you in case you need to use it.
This is to create reports using rules with templates. So what this is now in our software, we're able to show exceptions that occur in the trip. As you saw, I was just showing you, we can see it on the map, we can see those caution signs, but in the past you couldn't actually line up an exception rule with a trip. So I will actually go and show you how you can do this. Bring back an example of the activity trips report. I'm just going back there right now. Is maybe I can bring up Angie again, because she's a good example to use. And I can maybe just see a normal report. I'm not too interested in making a report based off of this right now. I want to see the data tab, because it will have all the information, equivalent of any reports, right? Okay, so we have that trip that Angie had, and just because I haven't put into the report tab yet, I haven't made anything about it. I just will go to this data tab, and as you can see, when I finally make it to the end of this, you can see that we have exception rules that pop up here. And these will populate with exception rules if I set it up to do so. So right now it's not populating because I didn't select something with these exception rules that pop in, but I just wanted to show you that it can fill up to 7 exception rules. It should be 6. I'm not sure why it says 7, but it could be that we upped it. Exception rules for that trip and their information for it. The main reason why we did this is because the exception report itself was great and useful, but sometimes people wanted to see it in line with the trip itself, just to get a little bit more detail on it, so we added it. All right, so something you sort of saw a little preview to before when I was just showing you the sizing is that our import of zones in a mass import is actually set now to be able to fix problems that you put in there. So just going to a zone import, I will show you what I mean. So the import zone, as a lot of you may know or might not be aware of, you can actually import multiple zones at once using an Excel file, specifically XLS though, not XLSX or anything else. It has to be an XLS file. So just when you save it as a 1997 to 2003 Excel file. And when I just bring down this menu, you can see that there's different ways you can import this data. So basically you have, for example, a name, a lat long, a reference code if you want it to have one. You don't have to put it in there. Comments if you want it to be circular, and the general diameter of it. And you can see zone with coordinates, the coordinates themselves. This is reference, comments, yes, 250, and that will work. But maybe you're importing a lot and you might actually make a mistake. And obviously you don't want to just have to look where the mistake is and everything. So I just created this small example, if you'll bear with me. Okay, my test. And when I import it, you'll see I actually ran into one invalid issue. And to the side, it'll show you what was invalid. So specifically, I tried to import something with a bad address.
And you can see that it highlighted in red. So if there were multiple zones, the ones with the errors would be highlighted in red. So you know which ones are the problem ones.
And I could show an example of that if necessary. But for now, just with this, I try to change the address. I can actually change it to something proper. I'm going to put it to where I used to live. And I click import. Oh, there you go. And it went and it's valid. And now when I go to the zone section, I can find that Jordan test location that I made, and it's in there. At that location that I made, at Bloor Street. So it's just useful for you to know that that's how it works now, so you don't have to worry about bulk importing and then not being able to find that one error you made. It will show you where it is, highlighted in red, and even allow you to change it on the fly.
Can you delete bulk zones?
You can if you utilize the SDK. The capabilities are there. We don't currently have an example for it online, but it's not too hard to program in. We are, though, looking at ways of revamping and making things easier. You can go to the zone section and select multiple zones to delete, but when you mention this, I'm assuming you mean large bulk, not just small bulk. So what brings us up next is something that a lot of you have probably heard a little bit mention of, is the odometer consolidation. So what happens is whenever we update a vehicle now, it will actually reconcile the vehicle to fix this odometer as necessary in the past as well. What we did before was if you change the offset or if you change the vehicle with this device, it wouldn't fix the past data at all. So your IFTA reports, your various odometer reports from historic data, from engine data, etc., would all be off. It would not be proper. It would look something more like this. You know, I had one odometer, and then I changed it because of an offset or something changed the vehicle. I moved up. There's some offsets that were added here and then changed back and moved. And this is what it looked like at these timestamps if I look at it. This is what the data looks like. And as you can tell, this isn't that very useful to me. I don't know what's happening with this vehicle. Now you can tell here that there is an estimated value, and maybe what the graph should look like is something more along the lines of this. So this is what the reconcile has done for us. It's now fixed everything. It shows us that those offsets were fixed up. The past data is now interpolated to be proper. And now we have a properly fixed odometer historically and moving forward into the future. So this is a big change, and I would assume that there might be some questions about this.
Not yet, but I do have a question about the zones. Going back, sorry. Can I export zones is the question.
So again, that's possible utilizing the SDK. And that will be a lot of our answers going forward because we can't just add everything right now to the software. So anything that isn't available in the software right now but would otherwise be reasonable can be done through the SDK.
And that export on the zone is going to be the center, latitude and longitude of whatever shape they've done.
You can always run a zone report though, which gives you all that information if you ever need it for any purposes like that. Obviously the zones will still stay in the system, but you can download a zone report which gives you that centroid lat and long.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. Thank you. So I might just show you guys a little bit of preview of something that we're planning on doing going forward. So it's not in the system yet, but it's just sort of a preview. As you can see in this odometer, you see that there's now this little option here that tells you where this data is coming from. And this will help you determine when you're trying to see the odometer from your vehicle, if it's coming from the engine or the GPS. Now, as many of you already know, is if the engine does not provide data to us for the odometer, the GPS will pick it up and do it from there. So as you can tell, my vehicle is plugged in first to this device, and this is definitely not what my odometer is. You know, I wish I had a new car like that, but no. This is when I first plugged in the device, and it's also reinforced by the fact that it says it's using GPS for the odometer data. If I were to change my odometer to something it actually is, you know, it's around 300,000. Yes, it's an old car. And I save it, it will take a little bit of time for it to update for you because it's actually running the reconcile now and fixing the historic data based off this offset I put in. So that's another aspect of the reconcile. And as you can see, it does give you a warning. It does let you know what's going on. And just looking at information. If you're replacing the device, we do recommend you just make a new vehicle and put in the odometer. But if you're fixing the odometer just because it is pulling from GPS and you want it to match what's on your odometer in the dash, then you would go ahead with something that I'm doing now. Any questions on that? This was a big change that fixed up a lot of problems with our IFTA report because we do know that it wasn't well supported without fixing up the historic data. A lot of you might have already noticed this because we pushed out this build about 2 months ago. So we're just moving on to some other tips and tricks, small things, nothing too big, is, for example, when you send an email alert on a broken rule, one thing that's pointed out is phone numbers and emails generally tend to be hyperlinked. What this means is phones or tablets or even your email will see it as a phone number, and you can just click it to call that number. Personally, within our company, there wouldn't be use for that, but maybe for you, you would want an email to trigger off of a certain person and put in maybe a phone number for that person.
Yeah, I think I made a notification template a while back for an accident where it had a hyperlink for the location of where the accident occurred using the Latin long tokens, but then using the driver comments, in my example, I put in the driver's phone number in the device comments and included that token in the notification template so that when I did receive it, it was hyperlinked. I not only had the ability to see it on a map, but also to call the driver and see if he's okay.
And just looking at some templates here is you can go to the email template and you can see you can put in various options here. And one thing that was pointed out in that slide is that you can actually put the device comments in here because maybe you have extra information in the comments, maybe more details, maybe that's where you want the phone number to be. So if I put the vehicle device broke its rule, this, and then I can say phone number, and I put the phone number in that vehicle device comment, and I'll put the phone number right beside it. You have extra options with these templates to sort of play around and do things. I won't get into right now how to set up the templates. That will be part of another presentation, or if you need, you can email and ask. But these templates can be very useful for setting up emails with more information in an email than you'd have to otherwise go into the system and look for.
Just a question about international phone numbers. I think someone's asking if it recognizes numbers outside the U.S. This is more so the phone being used, I think, right?
Yeah, this isn't generally our software doing this.
Yeah.
This is actually the system you're on. So if your phone is international yourself, let's say you're from England, and it has, I believe, a 011 in front, it will actually know that because your phones know that that's a phone number that's local. But in truth, I think even our phones do that, so I don't think you'd have any issue. Remember, it's not our software that's actually hyperlinking it. It's hyperlinking it for the purposes of being in an email, because emails do that nowadays. All right, so we're probably going to come into the last example that we have for the day, which is how to change the colors by status. I did show this once before in a 5.6 to 5.7 update, but it's just useful to show. And it's basically to just show different color codes for vehicles on the live map. It's very useful for dispatch. So again, I'm looking at this map, and it's just riddled with zones, so I'm just going to clear this up a little bit. and we have some vehicles that are driving. What I can do is, if I go to highlight groups, I can actually highlight specific groups so they will stand out instead of other ones. Maybe I can select territory, North region. As you can see, we have one that stands out as a black vehicle, and the other ones show up as sort of a highlighted star that's grayed out. This color changes based off the group it's in, etc. But right now the gray is just because they're not included. So you can change this black color to stand out a little bit better if you'd like, but it will show that group's color for all vehicles that are in that group. And this is great for dispatch. So if you just wanted to separate it and say, where are all my bulk trucks? You can click the bulk trucks group and see where they all are. And then just as another tip, and I pointed out this one a lot, is if I want to click nearest, hey, I can see that that one's this close to it, to this spot. Right? This vehicle, since I highlighted it, you see the other ones are grayed out, but the one that I selected sort of stands out and says less than 1 mile away. Whereas the other ones that aren't part of this are grayed out and sort of hidden. So just useful for dispatch, probably other uses for it too, although that's the one I know for it best. And that's pretty much it for this presentation.
So with that, we bid you farewell for this week, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks for coming.